Good morning. My name is Julie Gatti, and I'm a judge of the Macomb County Circuit Court. I handle a civil criminal docket, so my criminal docket is a felony docket, which means that it's punishable by up to a year or more of incarceration. And my civil docket is for civil matters that have a value of greater than $25,000 for the most part. My court also has a family division for divorces, custody matters, paternity actions, as well as a probate division, which handles things like wills and estates, also proceedings for mentally ill folks and folks that can't take care of their own needs. So I'm coming to you by video rather than our previously scheduled appearance in your classroom. I'm sorry about that. I'm intimidated to do a video. This is not my preferred method of communication, which is strange because I'm here to talk to you about communication as a leader. So before I became a judge, I was an attorney for 23 years, 22 years before I became a judge. I also served as the president of the Macomb County Bar Association. So I led a group of lawyer leaders for a year, and I served on that board for about 9 years. So a lot of what I learned about being a leader came from serving on that board. I'm very happy that I decided as a young lawyer to seek a seat on that board, and I sat as a director for many years and watched good leaders and bad leaders come through that organization. And I hope that I helped to pick and choose some of the things that I would do to define what my leadership style would be. I don't think that there's a cookie cutter way of being a leader, and I kind of looked at the book that you guys have read, that 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and there's so many good nuggets in there. But I think you can take that and see what things fit with your personality and the way that you relate to people, and develop your own leadership style. There's not one particular way to be a good leader. So if some of those things in that book seem foreign to you, that doesn't mean that you're not cut out to be in a leadership role. I just want to say before we get started that I'm very sorry that this year has turned out like this for you. I know it's hard to be home. I know it's hard not to be with your friends in school. I just want you to know that the parents and the community leaders, all of us are very sad that this has been the way that this year has turned out. And I hope that it will make all of you stronger and maybe give you some ability to look at problem solving before those problems actually arise. I don't think anyone could have foreseen this coming, and I think good leaders take the lead of understanding that sometimes things are going to come down the pike that maybe you haven't prepared for, and there has to be even the things that are unlikely to happen. Sometimes you need to make some preparations that the unlikely can happen. So I think that you as students, having gone through this, will probably take some lessons with you that will make you better leaders down the road. One of the topics I was supposed to discuss was communicating as a leader. I had a very difficult year in 2018 of constantly having to answer some very hard questions. I was running for office. People don't like giving their vote to someone they don't really know. And many people have an issue that they're very passionate about, and they want your answers to hard questions. And oftentimes I didn't know what side they were on when they were asking those hard questions. For example, they would ask me about marijuana and what I thought about legalizing marijuana. And that person, you weren't really sure if they were pro-marijuana or they really were not. Also gun control, things that some of the topics that I was asked about were divisive topics. So I think that in communicating as a leader, you have to give the audience something that they can hold on to that makes them confident that you're going to make good decisions, not just based on being a yes man to one side or the other, but to really being able to analyze. We have a puppy, so sorry, you might get some. Frankie, do you want to meet the class? Frankie. No,
she's bad.
She doesn't listen very well. All right. Anyway, so answering those hard questions, understand that it's real easy to take a stand if you know what someone wants to hear. You have to speak the truth from your heart, and yet not do it in a divisive way so that you're taking one side strongly over the other. I always tried to answer those questions to let people know that I was analytical, that I wouldn't make rash decisions about anything. Sometimes when people just wanted to hear about guns, for example, I would turn it into a story about my husband and my husband being in law enforcement and how important gun safety is. And everybody can agree about gun safety. Not everybody can agree about certain other aspects of owning and using guns. So sometimes communicating as a leader just involves a lot of diplomacy and understanding. Come here, Frankie. All right, here's our puppy.
She's been a bad girl today.
She is terrible today. So, also, on the bench, communicating as a leader on the bench, as a judge, oftentimes, especially when I first started, I was a family lawyer. So when I started doing criminal and civil cases, I had done some criminal, but not much civil. Somebody in the room, usually one of the lawyers that was arguing, knew more than I did. And that's a terrible position to be in. And I like to think that after a year on the bench, it's not very common anymore. But you can't let your ego get in the way. So oftentimes I would ask the attorneys, listen, I didn't really practice this area of law, so tell me, how does it happen? When you first, X, Y, Z, have them explain it so that you're coming at it not just from a place of ego. I'm going to make a ruling because I'm the judge and they're asking me what my ruling is, but really to understand both sides of it and understand that sometimes, and acknowledge that sometimes someone in the room knows more about that topic than you do, and not letting that embarrass you, but being humble about getting some direction. I always think about my former boss when I was a legal secretary in law school. I think about my boss, and I was, again, his secretary. I made a mistake. I recall telling him that I had really blown it, and I will never forget him calling up that client, and it was completely my fault. And my boss, he was an attorney by the name of Richard, he called that client, he owned it, he took responsibility for it. He did not say, well, my secretary blew the deadline and now, X, Y, and Z. He said, it's kind of the buck stops here, right? It's his client, it's his practice. It was his responsibility to make sure it was done on time, and he took the heat. I think that was a very valuable lesson for me, and I couldn't have felt worse about what I had done, but I always took that with me. And when attorneys are in my courtroom and they blame things on their secretary, it's one of my biggest pet peeves. So the buck does stop with the leader. The next topic was having hard conversations. Obviously, it's something that you can't be afraid of as a judge. Every time two lawyers are going to argue a case in front of me, one's probably going to win and one's probably going to lose. My best advice for having those hard conversations and handing someone a loss is often that if I can analyze and really have listened and understand the issue, and help them to respect my reasons for making the call that I'm making, it's much more easy for the losing party to accept that ruling and take it on the chin. I would often say, why do you think that lawyer, your brother counsel over here, what he's saying about this certain case, People versus Smith, when he says that People versus Smith applies to this situation and should influence me to rule his way, why is he wrong? Tell me how you view your case in the light of People versus Smith. And once we've had those conversations, respectful conversations, if I still say I respect the job that you're doing for your client, but I don't agree with you, these are the reasons why, I feel like both attorneys walk out of the court and know that they got a fair shake, that my reasons for my ruling were clearly articulated, and I don't think anyone can fault a leader for having hard conversations if you've done it with respect and you've done it with good reasoning behind you.
You're almost at 12 minutes, just letting you know.
Okay. Well, maybe it can be a two-part series. All right. I'll move a little faster. How not to communicate the truth. When I saw this question, I thought more about my time as a lawyer than my time as a judge. How not to communicate the truth. I thought about my clients in divorce and custody matters. Understand that your truth, in quotation marks, is always about your perspective. I remember hearing a client that would come to me who didn't want to share any time with a new baby with the man who had helped her make the baby. Very interesting to hear a young mother tell me that he's not capable of caring for a baby. Well, you picked him, you had a baby with him. How am I supposed to trust you if you didn't pick someone who you knew could love and care for a baby to make a baby with? So a lot of times I'll let him see her on Saturday for 2 hours. Well, you're not going to let him do anything because he's a parent just like you are, and you don't have the upper hand. So I think about those situations.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. Oh, poor baby. Oh,
She was going for it.
Oh, dear
She
Lord.
went for it.
Oftentimes I had to tell my clients, the way you see your truth is not the way a judge is going to see your truth. There's two sides. There's two perspectives. I've had a dad who remains in a marital home. Mom moves to a new community. Mom says, "Well, I have the kids more during the week. I have 4 days and on every week, and you only have the weekends and 1 weekday. So obviously the kids should go to school where I live because it's easier for me." Well, all right, let's see the other side of it. Dad is in the school district that the kids have known for a long time. Dad might help with the basketball coaching at the kids' old school. So there's always another side. So when you talk about how not to communicate your truth, I think that the thing that strikes me the most is to make sure that you understand that your truth might not be everyone's perspective. So analyze it from both sides, and rather than coming at it from a my way or the highway perspective, understand that you're going to see both sides ahead of time, and then try to formulate how you're going to communicate why your way is the way that it should be. Last is body language and why it's important as a leader. That's an easy one for a judge. If you've ever been in a courtroom, you understand that the judge will come out after the deputy has already entered the courtroom. The deputy will say, "All rise." The deputy will call the court to order. And the judge is the last one to walk in the room, and I walk in from my very own door. I walk in while everyone is standing. Then I sit into my chair, and then I tell everyone, "You may be seated." After I've taken my seat. Obviously, a really strong visual of what it means to be a leader and to have that body language. Not everyone can be in a courtroom situation where you have a deputy opening your court and making everyone stand for you. However, it is one of those things that leaders do think about as far as how to look like a leader. I do settlement conferences in my courtroom on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, not in my courtroom, in my chambers. Because I wear a robe all of the time, it would be very easy for me to conduct those conferences in more casual attire. Maybe jeans and a turtleneck, sneakers. Maybe I was wanting to run out at lunchtime and go to the gym. I think it's very important to understand that what you wear and how you present yourself matters. And if attorneys are coming in suits and ties and skirts and dresses and looking professional in their attire, it's not appropriate for me to be sitting there in sweats and sneakers. That does not convey my role in that settlement conference as the person who's going to help facilitate a resolution of their case and eventually be the one that's calling a lot of the shots on that case. So being in control in that situation, I feel that it's very important for me, even if I'm not in my robe and I'm just in my chambers, to still be in appropriate attire. It's body language. I think about eye contact. Even when I do come into the courtroom and sit at my seat, everyone sits down. I look out at the crowd. I look at everybody who's there, and I say, "Good morning, everyone." And I mean it, and they say good morning back, and that took a little while for them to get used to. But people who are in my courtroom all the time, they know that. It's good to have eye contact. It's good to establish that relationship. Take a few minutes before getting down to business to establish some sort of rapport. And then the last thought that I have about body language in my courtroom is I was scheduling a criminal case for a young woman one time, and she was standing next to her attorney, and they were at the podium, and she had her arm down on the podium and her chin or cheek in her hand, and she was looking like this and looking off and not really making any eye contact with me and not giving me any respect. And I just stopped everything and I said, "Am I boring you?" Make sure that when someone is speaking, especially someone in a leadership position, that you as a listener or as a follower or as a person taking direction, that you are looking engaged, that you're making that eye contact, and that you're showing that leader some due respect. So again, good luck everyone with the remainder of this time in quarantine and in shelter in place, and I hope that this summer brings some good fun for all of you, and that soon we can go back to normal. God bless you all. Thank you.